Hey Eric, how you doing today?
Hey Howie, the fitness gorillas are back.
We got a great guest today. I mean, the other day we had a record number of people watching Mark Mastrov and a lot of questions. And he's a heavyweight, and our guest today is another heavyweight. Why don't you introduce him?
You know, I can't believe he agreed to come on our show. Maybe he hadn't seen our other ones.
Good thing.
It's a real honor. Many of you may not know his name just like that. The insiders in the industry do. Mark Mastrov and I certainly do. 25 years ago, the fitness industry couldn't attract any private equity money. It was kind of something that wasn't done. Well, this man stepped up, and along with his company, McCowan DeLue, Mr. David King decided that he wanted to get into the fitness industry. So he teamed up with Mark Mastrov and Leonard Schlem at that time, and him and his company decided to invest in, it was called 24-hour Nautilus at the time. And we'll ask him why he did that, why he chose that company. So from that start, I think at the time, Mark had about 32 clubs. Together, David King and Mark Mastrov grew the company to a global arena. I think 465 locations. We had 4 million members, 25,000 staff. We're all over, all through Asia, Europe, America, everywhere. And David and Mark exited the company with a sale of, unprecedented at the time, the largest in the fitness industry, 1.8 billion US dollars. And I was so fortunate to be part of the team and sit in on all the board meetings that David would hold, and the board members, Magic Johnson, Cindy Crawford, owners of Vans shoes, and so many other unbelievable people. I learned so much. And it's again unbelievable that I have David King to interview on the Fitness Gorillas. He's a legend. So please, a big welcome for Mr. David King.
And there he is.
Hey, David.
How are you?
So we can see you. You're in your office. You've been stuck inside in New York City for quite some time.
Yes, Groundhog's Day, day after day.
But you told me you're in there from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. I go downstairs. I get done with my day. I open that door over there, turn the lights, go downstairs, and yell out, "I'm home." Yeah. Gotta have a process during this. At least me. I gotta have a routine and a process to get through it.
You're so disciplined, though. I mean, that's not easy to do, right?
Yeah, we try.
So, David, let's go into the questions that we set up. Now, let's forget about all those questions. David,
some impressions.
So way back when, 25 years ago, you were the managing director of McCowan DeLue. You looked at the fitness industry, and what did you see? What made you get excited about that?
Well, so the flavor of the day, that was the early 90s, and the flavor of the day, at least the investing style we were pursuing at McCowan DeLue was buy and build investing. And that was really focused on identifying an industry that was really fragmented, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then once you've identified the fragmented industry, finding a so-called platform, and then growing that platform through acquisition as a way to enhance the bottom line and earn a return. And back then we were shooting for much higher returns than private equity is delivering today. So we were looking for deals that were going to make us 4 and 5 times our money back then. So you needed large industries, and you needed a lot of acquisition opportunities. And so we were looking at all kinds of industries. And one of the industry ideas that was brought to me was the fitness industry. And we really looked at this thing. And I can't remember the number. It's been so long, as you pointed out to me, unfortunately. It's been 25 years. But I seem to remember at the time there were like 12,000 clubs. And the top guy was Bally. And Bally had maybe 300-ish clubs, I want to say, at the time.
Right.
Maybe it was more, but it was a couple hundred clubs out of 12,000.
Yeah, there's a few hundred.
And then the number two guy, I believe, was Ray Wilson at that time, right? With 69.
Yeah, I think about 65 locations at the time that you teamed up with Mark and 24 Hour Nautilus.
And then 24 Hour Nautilus was in the top. They were in the top 10. They might have been in the top 5. So one, that just showed us this industry was phenomenally fragmented, meaning distributed ownership, right? That's what I mean by the fragmentation aspect. So out of 12,000 clubs, fewer than 1,000 were owned by the top 10 companies, and that's pretty unusual to look at an industry in the United States that at the time was that fragmented. And then if you just looked at the trends, it didn't take a lot of brilliance to understand that the trends in fitness were all pointing in the right direction, and the baby boomers and the subsequent generations were going to sustain that growth, and that lots of capital would be needed to sustain it. So that's really what led me to fitness. And we were presented with a whole bunch of ideas, and we just sort of worked through them.
And why with Mark and 24 Hour Nautilus? Why did you choose that company first?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, there was a deal to be done. Leonard and Mark, but Leonard in particular, really, Leonard Schlimm and Mark Mastrov owned the company, and Leonard was eager to sell the company and get liquid. And Leonard was a guy who dealt in the financial realm. Mark was really the operator. Leonard was really the finance guy, the way I looked at it. And Leonard dealt in the financial realm. He understood institutional capital. Today private equity is a phrase that everybody understands, I think, or a lot of people understand. It's not an uncommon phrase today, but if you flash back to that time, 93, 94, private equity wasn't on the front of everybody's mind. It was something you had to explain. And Leonard was a guy who understood it. He had come from the venture capital world. He had a training in finance and had worked at an accounting firm, as I remember. And so, one, there was a deal to be done, and Leonard was eager to put a deal together. The second thing, and the very critical thing, was we really needed a platform. So when we went out and met these companies, and you and I, Eric, have laughed about this a lot over the years, it was really the classic mom and pop industry. It was really tons and tons of individual operators, and a guy would own one club or maybe 2 clubs. It was really unusual to find guys with 3 clubs or more, right? It was really 1 and 2 club operators, and a lot of fanatical people. It was really a passion for a lot of people, and so you weren't talking about corporate refugees who had gotten into a yogurt franchise or there weren't any coffee franchises at the time, but you get the point. This wasn't about corporate refugees who had gotten into franchises. This was honest to God, passionate zealots, fitness zealots who, people like you guys who
You too. You were into fitness. Come on.
I was, but I wasn't like a guy like you, right? And a guy like Mark Mastrov, a guy like David Giampaolo. I mean, we could name a guy like Ray Wilson and all the guys. These were guys who were passionate about fitness, and they would inevitably start clubs. And so you were going out and meeting guys who didn't have a lot of business background. So the point here is we needed a platform that was an honest to God business, that had books and records and had accounting, and where we could do what's called the due diligence. We could actually look at the company. We could verify the financials. We could make sure the accounting was correct. We could verify the cash flows. So that was a key point. We needed a platform, and we also we recognized at that point we were going to have to bring in lots of outside business guys if we really wanted to grow and scale this thing the way we had envisioned. So the platform was more about having something that was coherent, that had some size and scale to it, that had some operating standards and had some financial control. So that was another thing. And then, obviously, Mark and Leonard, but really Mark was, he had a real vision about what he wanted to do. These guys had put together, I want to say it was 24 clubs when we bought it.
32. I think 32.
No, it was still in the 20s. It was still in the 20s. And they had put these clubs together one by one. Leonard had bought the first club, brought Mark in as the operator because Mark was the member at the club who best understood how to use all this Nautilus equipment. And Leonard made a deal with Mark, and Mark started doing this on the side, and then eventually quit his day job and did this full time. And then from there they started buying. And buying is overstating it. They started taking over individual clubs throughout the Bay Area, operators who were having troubles or operators who were tired of it or didn't like the intensity of it, and had really scaled that up to mid-20 clubs. And Mark was, he had a process for doing that. It was primarily the Bay Area. I think we had one or two, we had some stuff in the East Bay, and then we had some stuff, maybe one or two things down south. But it was a concentrated, discrete network of clubs. Was well run. Mark really had processes for identifying new club managers, for running the clubs. Had real vision around how to think about the industry, and it stood out. And we clicked, and that was that.
What was the main excitement that you had around Mark? I mean, here you are, you're going to invest in this for the first time. You had to find the leader who you felt comfortable with, who was going to take it from the Bay Area to globally. What did he have that you just said he's the guy?
Well, we weren't thinking global as we were sitting there. What I was thinking was, 24 clubs could become 100 clubs or something like that, and that would have been, that alone would have been heroic. I mean, God forbid, obviously we went well beyond that because of the skills and the inherent talents of Mark and the team and all the great operators we brought together. But it wasn't really thinking about it. It was thinking about, how are we going to get this thing to 50 to 100 clubs? And Mark really, he was I want to say he was a thoughtful guy. I'm trying to think of a better word. I mean, he really understood the industry and really had passion around it, had a vision for how to grow it. Understood. I guess here's one thing that was really different about Mark was when we went out and talked to the operators in that day and age, most of them didn't have financial IQ. Most of them didn't have financial knowledge. Most of them were really focused on operating a gym and getting new members. And as signing up members and getting your upfront payment. And most of them weren't really focused on what it meant financially and what you had to do to sustain one. And Mark did. He had both sides of the equation. He knew a P&L really well. Maybe didn't know a balance sheet so much at the time, but subsequently became really familiar with the balance sheet as we put debt on the company. But understood the P&L and understood the business and had processes around all of that. So it was really as an investor, it was a click. And then individually, I just like Mark a lot. Serious guy, fun guy, motivated guy, passionate, all the things that just make it fun to spend time with him.
Yeah, he's the only one that I've ever met in this industry that really can do it all. He's and one of the things about him, he's a great strategist. So I'm sure you two together, you can map out the next steps. And a couple of funny questions. So when Ray Wilson, who was my partner at the time, heard about McCowan DeLue, David King, and Mark Mastrov teaming up, I remember getting a phone call from him and saying, "Hey, Eric, let's go into Mastrov's territory and let's open up a club right in his backyard, and maybe we'll get somebody to buy us out. What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I think he's got like a lot of clubs there. How are we going to do it?" He says, "God damn it, it doesn't matter. We're going to do it anyway." Boom. And it worked. Mark, he had me go into Fremont, San Jose, in Mark's territory. So Mark doubled down and put some phenomenal clubs in Ray's territory. And then you actually got to meet the legend, Ray Wilson. You remember your first meeting with him at his house?
I do. It's hard to forget anything about meeting with Ray Wilson or doing anything with Ray Wilson. Just I love Ray to death, and his intuitive sense of how to make things happen and how to make money and how to deal with people, just phenomenal.
He he was so excited to meet you. I remember the whole thing, and he's people. I call Mark the Godfather of the industry, and Ray's really the founder of the industry, and he's 93. He's in Mexico with his latest chain called Ray Wilson Family Fit throughout Mexico.
No surprise.
Yeah, he's got, I think, 20 locations, doing great. And he's as sharp as a razor blade as he always.
You guys really need to get his stories down before it's too late, because just some of the stuff over the years spent with that guy that he would talk about the earlier days in the industry, well before me for sure, and you and Mark, back with Jack Lane and names like that he talked about were just phenomenal. But the funny thing is we had contacted, as I remember it, we had contacted Ray before we ever did the 24-hour Nautilus deal. We reached out to, I want to say 5, 6, 7 different operators, and actually there was a group that I was a little more eager about the 24-hour Nautilus initially, and that didn't pan out. But one of them was Family Fitness. But then when I heard about it, it was 69 clubs, and they were each individually owned, and blah blah blah. I'm like, forget it. Let's not spend our time on that thing. And so yes, we did 24-hour Nautilus, and then the very first deal we did was we did a 6-club deal in Sacramento that we bought fairly shortly, probably within 3 or 4 months of doing the original 24-hour Nautilus deal. And that was another deal that I had already teed up, and I had met the guys, and I'd gone out and visited before we bought 24-hour Nautilus. So it was a pretty easy deal to do. And so there we are, having our first board meeting or two. We've got 24-hour Nautilus. We've now bought the 6 clubs in the Sacramento chain, so we're now over 30 clubs, feeling great. And what do we hear? But these guys from Southern California have opened a store in our it was in the East Bay, right, Eric?
Yeah, Fremont, California.
In Fremont, and so not the East Bay, but on the peninsula, and we're competing against us and taking people away, and we're thinking to ourselves, what in the world's happened here? How can this possibly be? We thought we owned the Bay Area, so that was really a lesson in the fact that there's room for more than one club for sure. And yeah, sure enough, well, that wasn't the real reason that drove us to acquire Ray Wilson's Family Fitness. It certainly was among the reasons, no question.
Yeah. Well, okay. Howie, you have a question?
I have a question for David, because I see how his progression of learning how the business worked and how he could scoop everything up together, make it big, is very interesting. Because we were all doing our own thing back then in the mid-90s, and I had a few approaches. I was a partner with a big real estate concern, and so I learned quite a bit about the financial side of it also. But looking at it then versus now, how has it changed in your opinion? Number one, and number two, how far do you think it can still go, especially given the current situation?
Well, starting from the back of your question, the current situation is going to be a blip on the radar. It doesn't feel like it right this minute.
Yeah.
But this is something we're going to look past in a year or two from now and say, wow, you remember all of that? I don't think we're in a world where pandemics happen every 3, 4, 5 years. So, based on the history of pandemics, and they've been throughout human history, but based on what I know and what I read, I feel like this will be a blip, and so I don't think it will affect the long-term course. It's certainly going to create a lot of disturbance in the near term, and we can come back and talk about that. But the industry today versus the industry when I got, it's not even the same, in my opinion. When we got in, when we made that investment, brand wasn't a huge issue. It was an issue, and Bally's had established a brand, but for God's sake, Bally was also the name on fitness equipment. Bally was the name of casinos, so I don't think Bally was any great brand signifying fitness, and there really wasn't a. There was one other name at the time. I'm trying to remember, Eric. Bally and Nautilus, the Nautilus brand, right? And the way the Nautilus clubs all came about was that guy who owned Nautilus would go around to the club owners and say, hey, you can use my you can use my name, you can use my brand. He was trying to sell his equipment to clubs, but that Nautilus brand didn't resonate with the average person coming in and looking to work out. So there wasn't really brand back then.
Well, there was Gold's Gym. Gold's Gym kind of had that certain hardcore mystique that we were involved in, Eric and I, from the very beginning, like in the early 80s.
Right,
and they had built up quite a few clubs.
That was an enthusiast brand, right? That wasn't a brand that the man on the street knew, right? Yeah. That was really a hard. There was Gold's and World already at that time,
right.
But those were for those guys I talked about earlier, the guys like you guys who were in early, who were zealots and fitness gorillas, right? That was for the fitness gorillas back then. But so brand is
those really are the GUERs.
Everybody knows Orange Theory. I've never been in an Orange Theory personally. Everybody knows that brand. As an example, right? Everybody, the Equinox name is a brand that a lot of people know. Soul Cycle, all of these brands, people know these names. Peloton is a phenomenal brand. The second thing is there was no internet when we started, right? And so, as an investment thesis, the one thing I always thought about this relative to all other investments is, wow, you can do all this other stuff with the internet, but you still have to go to the gym. And, it wasn't really something that I think others saw early on in the life of this. We thought the internet would ultimately impact the gym and what we had in the gym and maybe impact our financial model. But I don't think we ever thought, wow, this could fully displace the gym.
Yeah.
So the internet was really something that is remarkably different between today and back then. And then the other thing is, this is a sophisticated industry now. It's attracted a lot of capital. It's well known to the capital markets. It was unknown to the capital markets when I made the 24-hour fitness investment. It's attracted a lot of seasoned entrepreneurs. You've got a whole lot globally. You've got a whole lot of very big companies. And I started this off by telling you guys that that the top 3 or 4 companies at the time I made my investment didn't even have 500 clubs. I'm not sure they had 400 clubs. The top 5 clubs in the industry. So it really it's changed a lot.
Wow. So then you decided you're going to go to Asia. Invest again with Ray Wilson and myself. I know Mark was interested in doing that, but what made you go from New York City to Hong Kong?
Well, the one thing that we saw as we were growing 24-hour fitness. So by the time we went to Hong Kong, 24-hour fitness is probably up to 200 clubs, right? Something like that. Yeah. And we're not only buying clubs now, but we're doing greenfields. And we really have a good real estate model. And we've opened up now, and we're probably in, we were 1 state initially. And by the time we get to 2000-ish timeframe, 99, 2000, we're probably in 12 or 13 states. We haven't gone to the East Coast. We clearly see, we're looking at Europe, we're looking at Asia. We clearly see that the fitness model is the same everywhere, right? It's the same box. It's generally the same promotion. It's the same equipment. It's the same business model. I mean, there's tweaks, obviously, right? But it's not like I have to go learn how does fitness work in Germany versus how does fitness work in Hong Kong. It's really understanding the operating model. And what we thought we had was, the best operating team in the business. And we thought we could take that team. And you had gone over there with Ray, and Ray, you guys had the foresight to just establish an American operation, so to speak, in the Asian markets. Asian markets had explosive growth. You could see all the trends we had saw when we made our original investment in 24-hour fitness. You could see those in Asia, but they were just it was a generation before, so there were no gym chains, right? And you could see the development of the middle class in a lot of these countries you were in Asia, and you could see the that middle class and those younger people were influenced by global brands and by global trends, and they were seeing what was happening in the U.S. and to a lesser extent in Europe, and fitness and clubs were a really big part of that. And so for us, it was just looking at it and saying, look, we think we're going to replicate what happened in the U.S. In Asia.
So you've actually been through a pandemic before. Remember SARS in Hong Kong?
Right.
Yeah,
It's an old hat for you.
but I don't remember. I don't remember it. I remember reading about it. I don't remember feeling the experience of it, which is interesting, given how now that you look at it, SARS was much more dangerous than
Yeah.
COVID is.
But it was harder to spread. But I mean, it's the media hoopla around this is like nothing else. Beyond even Trump's election, it's the biggest thing that I've ever heard of. It's 24/7. I can't help anything.
I remember in the SARS time, it was like, oh yeah, that happens to those people who are on farms dealing with chickens or the bird flu or whatever it was called.
Right.
It didn't feel like it was something that you were going to get
Right.
walking around.
I remember. So you had come to Hong Kong, and you hadn't bought our company yet, and you're in our second location in Hong Kong called Causeway Bay. It's Monday night, about 7 p.m., and we had a lot of people in the gym. Probably had about 500 or 600 people. We had a lot of mirrors, and I asked you, I said, David, how many people do you think are in the club now? He said, 5,000.
How can you handle them all?
As soon as you said that, I kind of went back. I said, Ray, it's a done deal. You thought there was 5,000. And then we traveled. We went around, went to Japan to look with Phil. And then we went to, Phil had left. And we had already decided on the deal that Macau and Lou was going to come and be an investor with us here in Asia. And Mark was all for it. And for me, it was a done deal. I was already counting all the big money now. And you're about to go home. And I remember this as clear as day. We're both vegetarians, and we're hanging around lunchtime at the Oriental Hotel, the premier hotel in Bangkok. And I'm feeling so wonderful. We're about to get the big money, and you're there. You're in a good mood, and everything's fine. And this big vegetarian burger comes my way. And just as I'm about to chomp on it, I'll never forget the words. Levine, do you think I'm a moron?
And
I saw the money float down the river, the Chao Phraya River.
yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, what just happened? And then you said, Levine, you think I'm going to let you get out? I'm going to pay you and you're just going to leave? You have to stick around for a while. And at that point, I was ready to do whatever you said. I'll never forget that. Huh? Never forget that.
That was one of the scary things I remember about that investment was, you had brought over a couple of English-speaking guys to supplement the crew there, but the lack of depth in the management team was definitely scary, right? And how you were going to get somebody to, I did this later in life, so in the mid 2000s, some friends who had started a fund in India asked me to do a startup outsourced services company with them in Delhi, and we did that. And I remember going to the board meetings, and that was before India had gone crazy. That was really, really early on in the India opening up its markets to foreign investment and people bringing in foreign money and starting businesses. And we go to these meetings, and we'd say, well, we need a CFO, or we need this guy, or we need that guy. In each case, what we really meant was we need a guy from the U.S. who understands, or Europe, who understands finance and business, because the Indians really didn't, right? That hadn't been the way that India had been operating. You had all these young kids that were eager to do businesses. And anyway, it was like, how in the world are we going to get a guy over? And that was very much the whole, I would flash back to our times doing the Asian deal. That was always what scared me to death, was how in the world, if we desperately needed somebody who was skilled at something, how in the world were we going to get them to come to Hong Kong or Thailand or Taiwan or whatever it was? But thankfully it worked out.
Well, you know what I've noticed about you, David? You're obviously you're astute, a genius of statistics, financials, and everything. But you know what I've noticed about you? You're very, very sensitive to who you work with. You've got to like them. You got to have that good feeling about them. And I remember one time we were looking at buying a big chain throughout Asia. You remember this story? And we were with them in Hong Kong. We went to Singapore. We went to Thailand, and we were paying for everything along the way. And their company was pretty good. We were looking at it. It was a female only spa fitness chain.
Yeah.
And we were paying for everything. He came along with us, and then we went to his native country, which was Australia, and he invited us out for dinner. And he brought his family and a few of his friends. He ordered all the wine and the champagne. And at that point, we were pretty close to investing in his company. It would have been a big ticket. And then he didn't pick up the check.
No.
He did not pick up that check. And I remember you whispering in my ear, and you said something like, "That's it. It's over." And it was. I mean, you taught me about that simple dinner, what his character was, and what it was going to mean for us in the future. And I'll never forget that, because that was a big lesson in personality. His company eventually, did have situations in it, but I remember you telling me that it was just the tip of the iceberg and you didn't feel comfortable about moving forward, even though the financials were very good. I remember that very clearly.
I don't remember that story, but yeah. You gotta have the people, and that was really investing in fitness back when we did. It was really people driven, right? And that was, you asked a question about why 24-hour Nautilus. I mean, we really had to have the people to drive it, because again, you couldn't go to a headhunter and say, hey, I need to find somebody who understands fitness. You weren't going to a headhunter to do that, right? You can do that today, by the way. I mean, if I made an investment, if I was in my firm and we want to make an investment in a fitness chain, I could go ahead and say, hey, can you get me a CEO, right? I remember when we sold 24-hour fitness to Forceman Little, and Mark had left the company probably about a year after we sold it. And the whole process of trying to, even then, that was probably, 2005 or so? 2005, 2006?
I think so. Yeah, right around
Even
there.
then, trying to find a CEO that had the requisite skills for fitness was just incredibly hard.
Sure.
And by then you had a couple of guys who had really grown up alongside us, Lifetime, and Equinox had become larger, and you had the TSI guys. So there were a couple of large groups out there, but you still didn't have access to people. And so that people issue has been a real, certainly during my time in investing actively in fitness, that was really one of the key issues.
And I've learned that from you. I learned a lot from you, David, and that was one of the things that struck me the most about how important it was for you to feel comfortable working with the people that you were going to be working with, and why. And so thank you for that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I want to ask David a
I don't
question.
know how that resulted in you and I working together, but yes, you're welcome. But thankfully we did.
Question, David. What would your advice be to current gym owners, or maybe guys with a few clubs? How could they attract investors today, especially?
Well, I think, first it's, what are you trying to get? If I was a gym owner, my first thing would be to inventory what I have and what I want, right? If I'm looking to get backing, I'm not looking to sell, but I'm looking to get backing to grow, then you have to have demonstrated ability to do that. You have to have demonstrated skill around doing that. You have to have something that is a platform that somebody would want to invest behind, and you have to have the processes and the systems to do it. You have to demonstrate to somebody you can do it. If, on the other hand, I just want to sell my one club, or I just want to sell my 5-club chain and move on, and I don't care, then you need to organize this is obviously post-COVID, because right now I think you're only selling from a distress perspective. But if you're going to sell your club or clubs and you want to get out, you have to have them really well organized. You have to have your financials in order. Somebody has to be able to come in and audit that, understand exactly what you've got. You've got to understand the source of all of those revenues and earnings and how you've allocated them, and get ready to defend those numbers when you're talking about valuation.
Absolutely.
And I would argue that you ought to not just go to one guy. You ought to be going to multiple people. If you're not hiring an advisor, either because you don't want to pay them or you don't think you need to do it, you certainly need to be going to multiple potential buyers.
What would you think about now? I mean, right now there's a bunch of, well, big chains, obviously, small operations, maybe 20, 30 clubs. A lot of them are on the chopping block right now, unable to pay the rent, declaring bankruptcy, whatever. Would you be interested in seeing, opportunities in that area?
Yeah, it's possible. I think the challenge right now is to figure out. Well, there's a couple of challenges, right? Post-COVID, what is the footprint for gyms? What is the real estate? What is the model? And for those guys who are sort of in the middle, you have the high-end guys, and I think they'll do just fine. The high price point, the more luxury-oriented, the more service-oriented concepts. My guess is they'll do just fine. It will take them longer to get out of this if they get through it. Then the lower end guys, the franchisees, the discount guys, my guess is they'll also do fine coming out of this. Their business model probably won't be dramatically changed. We'll come back to that. But then you've got all those guys in the middle with those boxes that are sort of those mid-tier price points. So I'm not the $9 or the $13 or the $15 a month guy, and I'm not the $100 a month guy. I'm trying to sell you a membership at $69 that you can get a lot of what you're getting from me at a guy who's at 10. Those guys are going to have a challenge. I think the COVID crisis is going to accelerate their challenges in customer retention, and so I think there's going to be opportunity among those guys. And the question is, do you want to be investing in that sector to do the turnaround? Then the other guys who I think probably do well out of this are the boutique guys, right? So if you can survive, and by the way, lots of them won't survive, but you can put them back together. I think the boutique guys, those business models probably prevail and come out of it okay. And then the other unknown for me in terms of thinking about investing and where it's going is the internet impact and this quarantining and social distancing. The social distancing and all that will go away. We will get a vaccine for this thing, and we will all return to normal at some point. And going to a gym will become a regular thing. I don't think, I always thought even at the dawn of the internet age that, okay, great, I can do something at home watching a guy on the internet, but ultimately there's no substitute for going to a gym and seeing those people, those motivated people running on the treadmill next to me or lifting weights or whatever, and being in that gym environment. Now, Peloton and others have done a phenomenal job of replicating that motivational framework. So as an investor, I really have to think about how my concept is either going to have an at-home /internet, an at-home /digital model, or how I'm going to compete against and survive against the digital models. I think that's the challenge. So the two challenges are in the middle and the internet. And so would I want to be an investor in this environment? Perhaps, and perhaps if the distress got great enough, it could be very compelling.
Because right now, well, what we've been hearing over the last few months as we've been getting more and more into the fitness gorillas and giving advice, etc., and hearing advice, is that because the regulations vary from state to state in the United States and province to province up here in Canada, these boutiques are going to have a hell of a time trying to break even because they're all giving them strict restrictions on the number of people per square foot. And if you're normally having 24 people in a class, you might end up with 6 or maybe 8 if you're lucky. And meaning more classes to make the same revenue, more fees for the instructors. So I don't even know how that's going to work if this lasts, if these distancing restrictions continue at this level. That's going to be a big question mark for me.
Yeah, we I look a lot at, or talk a lot about restaurants and look at that, and we do a lot of financing around restaurants. And you think about the restaurant world, and you think, wow, everybody wants to get back to business, but if I'm a restaurant owner, I'm not so sure that I'm not advising you to wait until the very last moment to open, because you're opening to a model where you're going to run at 25 to 50% of capacity. So you're just opening up to lose more money. And why lose more money? Why not wait until you can open up to full capacity? I don't know that gyms have that same issue. I don't know, if a gym, if after you apply all the social distancing metrics, a gym can now handle 25 to 50% of its previous volume. If you're the operator, are you charging people the same thing you were? So you've opened back up at this 25 to 50% restricted volume. Are you charging people the same thing you were before? Will people accept that, or will people just say, you know what, I'll give it a pass right now and walk away from my membership until this makes more financial sense? That piece I don't understand. You guys maybe see more of that than me. I don't know.
We just discussed that with Mark the other day, and Mark was saying we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, if we can and we need to, we'll try and raise our rates once people get back to the gym. He doesn't think that's a great move right now, is raising the rates. But I mean, if you're going to be long term with only some restrictions on the capacity, I mean, it's right now a club. I belong to a very high end club up here in Montreal, and we're not anywhere near opening here. We have a hotbed right here in Montreal, kind of like New York, but not quite as bad. And this club says we're going to have to make a reservation. We're going to have to use an app to schedule when we're going to be coming in. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. I mean, I've been in gyms for 40 years and working out every day, and that's going to turn me off completely, especially at like $250 a month.
And I think that I agree with Howie on any type of restriction. The members are going to come back, and I love what you said, David, that this is a blip, and I agree with that. I mean, health is here, gyms are here for the very reason that you said, for the social aspect. I want to see that motivated thing, that person, that whatever. And so that's never going to go away. It is a blip, and I think the restrictions will change. And in my opinion, because David, you and I were talking to a boutique operator just a couple days ago, you're going to have to charge more. And the people that you're going to be charging more to are the people that can't stay away. And, to pay an extra $5 a class, I'm going to do that and get my class, because that 8 o'clock class is the time I need to do it, or the 7:30 class at night. So I think that when you look at 100% of most gyms, you've got about 40% to 50% diehards. They have to work out. Then you got the other group that want to work out, but it's not a priority. And then there's the other group that have a membership but don't come. The first group is going to pay more. They will pay more for a safe environment and to have what they had pre. The middle group, most of them will. And you're going to, with your home streaming, which is going to be a completely new avenue of revenue and stickiness to keep the members going. I think that not too long from now, we're going to be in a more positive situation than we were pre-COVID because of those two very important facts. That's what I really, really, really think.
Yeah, the one thing that charging more is a complicated situation, right? So going back to what I was talking about earlier, if I'm charging $9, $10, if I'm a Planet Fitness franchisee and I lift my rates 50% for 6 months or 9 months, that's a hell of a lot easier for my customer to handle than Howie's Club. Or if I'm a $69 a month guy and I'm telling you I'm going to raise it to $90 a month or something like that. So I don't think it's going to be uniform across all the clubs. It's going to be really hard to navigate. I think it's going to be a complicated time, but I agree with you. There's no question people will come back, and the social aspect is huge.
Well,
speaking of the social aspect, Eric, you just reminded me when you were saying that. I can't remember what the name of before the life cycle, there was another bike that was popular in gyms. I can't remember what it was.
Well, life cycle.
Pardon me?
Life cycle?
I think it was before the life cycle, but it doesn't matter. The point I'm going to tell you the story is those used to have, they used to have cigarette ashtrays on them.
In Japan, they had, remember?
Yeah, well, they had those in the U.S.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, in California they had them. When we first invested in 24-hour Nautilus, I don't think they had them at that point, but they had them in the not too distant past. So, the origins of the fitness business have a lot to do with being a social business, and that's the piece that I don't know. I don't think you could replicate that online.
No. I remember walking through some clubs in Japan, you, Phil, and myself, and they had beds in the middle of the gym.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the cardio, they had a dozen or 24 beds.
Yeah.
And we're looking at each other because we were looking at, the situation out there is very, very funny. And then I remember you and Phil being expert runners, and the three of us went out at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I think I returned first. But that's another story. But what I was referring to about charging more, by the way, was for the boutiques, the classes.
Yeah.
The classes to add $5 more and add a few classes more in the day. I think that can be done, or even shortening the class by 5 minutes or 10 minutes and just getting in that extra 2 or 3 classes at the peak times. I think that'll work. So,
yeah.
But I mean, for everybody hearing how bullish you are, David, about that it's a blip on the radar screen, and that we'll be looking back at this and saying, yeah, remember that when everything is normal. I think I agree with you 100%, with the extra fact that, like, I sent you that app from my friend in Dubai about the live stream and what you could have, how great the apps are now for at-home fitness. I mean, it's going to continue. A lot of private equity money is going in there right now. And so if you have a fitness center and you have that connected and being able to charge for it and having them be totally with you at home or at the gym, I think you're going to have longer term with you on the dues model. And I think you're going to be able to charge for it. So that's a big new thing that we didn't have pre-COVID. And that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, home fitness is usually more expensive than gym memberships, right? I mean, a lot of these models are much more expensive than your average gym membership.
They are.
That seems to me that will change over time too. But.
Maybe. How you have any last?
No, the only comment I have right now is, now that I'm looking at your shirt through your microphone thing, it's psychedelic, man. It's moving around like this.
Mine?
Yeah, your shirt.
Well, my microphone is psychedelic.
David,
I'm not the only psychedelic version.
I'm getting hypnotized.
You're getting hypnotized. But so, David, you are a legend. A lot of people don't know your name, but they know what you've done. And you've been a dear friend of mine now for 25 years. Thank you so much for coming on the Fitness Gorillas. You're a fitness gorilla, and you're a wonderful guy. And I've learned so much from you. And I just want to say a big thank you, David.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on.
All right. Bye, David. Thank you.
Dave. Well, that was interesting. I mean,
let me tell you about David. He doesn't say anything that he hasn't researched. He believes in 100%. He's not a gray area type of person. He's extremely serious, and as you see, he's a wonderful person. But when he says that this will be just a blip on the radar,
yeah, that's confidence building.
Hey, everyone listening out there, you're not going to have somebody like David King tell you that if he doesn't believe in it. And when he tells you that, you can go to the bank on it. He's researched it. He knows this industry like nobody else on that side. So I hope that whoever's listening right now, you feel a lot better having heard from one of the first pioneers in the whole world in our industry who put his money where his mouth is. He made it really good for everybody. And I think I hear him saying he's coming back. So I'm going to be bugging him about every single day at this time.
Well, he's a good guy to know.
So thank you guys for listening. Next week we have some great guests. We have Mel Tempest on Monday, 10 o'clock, actually 10:15 PST time. On Wednesday we have Quaco Black, the greatest architect and designer in the industry. When you see what he can do, I mean, none of his clubs look like fitness centers. They're art pieces, and they generate energy, passion, stickiness. I'm
going to ask him how you could take your club the way it looks now and try and retrofit it to some degree, because everyone's going to have a new edge now. So we'll see what he says.
Yeah. And one other thing we want to say is that we've actually been getting overwhelmed with the great responses that we've had. We started off with a few hundred viewers. Now we're in the thousands, and we're overwhelmed. I think the fact that Howie and I, we talk our truth. We don't mess around. We don't say something that we don't believe in, and we're always going to be that way. It's working, and so many people are tuning in. Our posts, we have thousands of people responding to them. And as we mentioned in the past, we're having our webinar very soon and our master class, which we're inviting everybody to come. And we promise you're going to get unbelievable amount of information to reopen with a flood of cash and long-term success. So thanks for the response. We're really happy about it. And we're going to continue telling it like it is. And as Howie's mentioned in the past, if we don't have the answer, we have people like David King to help us with if we don't have it. Mark Mastrov, that's our circle, and that's going to be your circle. So please keep joining us with Fitness Guerrillas. Howie, that's it for me.
That's it for you. I can't even remember what I was going to say. Yeah.
All right.
Hey,
see you on Monday.
If we don't know something, you probably don't need to know it either. That's all I can say.
All right.
See you next week on the Fitness Gorillas. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
Bye-bye.